you can have a voice and still have a controlled aggression about it. Hey, it's Garrett.
It's Andrea.
And welcome to the Daily Devotional.
Yeah. Okay, so today we are going to do Matthew chapter 5, but I have a question for you before we start. So you despise animals, so this question should be fun. If you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
I mean, like, my first response, like, you want to say, like, a lion. Mm-hmm. Because, like, they're at the top of the food chain. Like, you're less likely to die. And then you don't have to live in somebody's house. Like, for the most part, lions aren't domesticated. So you could be in the wild. And so...
Unless you're in Las Vegas, but okay.
Right, you wouldn't have to... More than likely, you're not somebody's pet. And I wouldn't want to be an animal that's somebody's pet.
You could be a squirrel.
A squirrel? No. No. That would give my father-in-law another reason to shoot me.
No. Okay.
Okay, so we are in Matthew chapter 5 today, and this is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, and so there's a lot of stuff in here, but we wanted to look at one certain area. There's a verse here in Matthew chapter 5 that is, it's not necessarily misunderstood. I just don't think we've ever understood it fully, and Andrea's got some good stuff on that too, but I really want us to get into it. But it's the verse that talks about how blessed you are if you are meek, or if the other word that is in Andrea's Bible with this is gentle. And Jesus is talking about blessed are the meek, blessed are the gentle, for they will inherit the earth. And it's not what you think it means. It doesn't mean blessed is the quiet person, or blessed is the person that always gets taken advantage of. That's not what this word means at all. And so I'd love for Andrea to share just for a sec, like, what that word actually means.
Yeah. So first off, when we're reading the word blessed, we have to translate that as happy or fortunate. Those are the two words.
Yeah.
So we can't just see God's going to bless me. It's not how it's read. It's translated to those two words.
Right. It's not like just a circumstantial thing. Like, oh, you have more money if this happens. Like, no, it's like a place you find yourself at in any place in life.
Absolutely. And then the word gentle is actually not used as like, oh, I'm just going to be calm and kind. That's not the right word. The word is actually praus or proutus, which means war horse. That's what they would use that word there as. So what they would do is they would go out and they would get a wild horse, and they would take this horse back. They would train it for war. So what they would do is they would say, okay, we're going to train this horse to be gentle at first, but when it's time for war, this horse is going to be wild. We're going to release it with all of its energy for war.
Right. And then it's ready for it. And for me, honestly, like, this has been a verse that I have misinterpreted, or it was like a reason for me to be quiet or not to say anything. It was like a reason to not speak up when times were important to speak up. But what this really means, like Andrea is talking about, is this is a war horse. This has been trained and ready for battle, and it can be the gentlest of creatures. But when it's time for war, it's like a harnessed aggression in a way. And this has really taught me a lot to say there are moments when you do have to war in this life, especially in spiritual battle. And that's why we wanted to bring this out and talk about it.
I always like to bring things back to Jesus, and where we saw this in his nature, and we can see him when he went to the temple and they were exploiting people, and he turned the tables and said, no, this is my Father's house. And he had that zeal. And I think about that in our life, and like, where can we let the war horse come out? And it's not in anger, and it's not to harm people, but it's spiritual, because we don't fight a battle of flesh and blood, but we always are fighting the spiritual battle. And that is where we have to release that war horse, to allow ourselves to start fighting for our family members, fighting for those things that we're going through, that we have to have faith and believe, God, you said you're going to do this, so I've got to fight and release that war horse within me. And when the time comes, like, you have got to fight with everything within you, because we have that within us. We fight the wrong battles sometimes, and I believe that's when we're the wild horse out in the field, and we're not supposed to be fighting that battle,
Right.
but we're supposed to be tame in that battle, but come back and fight the correct battles.
Right. This is such a good picture, because you're right. It's not just, this isn't just permission just to speak your mind and everything on it. We're not the wild horse that's not been tamed, but it's a tame horse ready for war. And so it is more strategic, and it is, I really like what you said. It's like a faith-based, like it's the ability to be able to have faith in moments when we shouldn't, and that spiritual warfare. I think that's the time to have the voice when somebody is in a real life example. You might have somebody you work with, or a friend, or somebody that really is going through a difficult time, and sometimes you just think, well, the best thing to do is just to be quiet. And sometimes something does need to be said, but we're looking at spiritual war here. So maybe something needs to be said in faith, or something that points them back to Jesus, or something that's encouraging. And I think that's the way God's given us this voice. This is such a key verse in Scripture that I think we do miss, and I think it's always excused Christians away from being able to say anything.
And I want to add too, like, part of our war horse is taming our tongue. That is part of it as well.
Yeah.
And because you kind of said something, and I'm like, it just dawned on me, like, our mouth as well is something that we need to tame for the right moments. This is a continuous thing. This isn't something that you just do and you have. I believe it's a continuous work.